All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 275 of the Restoring Rapport podcast. We're super excited for the content we got planned out for you guys today, as always. This is a podcast for young believers who are pursuing the goal of marriage and family and trying to get married as young as possible in a healthy way. I'm your host, Seth Hensley. I come on twice a week, every week on Thursday and Sunday to discuss not only the benefits of getting married young, but I try to equip and encourage you in your pursuit of that goal. And today, we're going to be going over a video on basically how to host your own events and some kind of tips for beginner hosting events. And the reason that this is relevant to young believers trying to get married young is twofold. Number one, you often find your spouse, or you can often find your spouse, through events that are catered to young adults. And so, if you're having young adults in your home for a meal and a game night or an outdoor movie or something like that, that is a really great way to meet people. But it's if you're looking to get married, obviously you're trying to look for prospects. But number two, once you get married, in order to maintain a healthy community, you're going to have routines and rhythms. And the way that you do that is by hosting events in your own home with your community. And so, hopefully this will benefit you on both sides of marriage is what I'm hoping. And so in the immediate, it's going to benefit you by giving you a way that you can be proactive in finding the person that God has out there for you to marry. And number two, once you have found that person and crossed the line of commitment into marriage, it's going to help you continue in your community and maintain not only a healthy marriage, but a healthy community as well. And so really excited for this video. This is done by family teams. We talk about family teams on the show all the time. And I've done several podcasts with Jeremy Pryor, as well as a coaching course that I'm taking now by 1KH called A House for Community. It's really good. But if you guys are interested in anything that family teams does, I would highly recommend them. I use them as sources all the time on the show. I love basically everything that they do is right in line with what I think a healthy family should be. And obviously, this is a step ahead of where you guys are now, because you're young believers who are soon to be married. But once you're married, they're going to have lots of stuff for you. So once you kind of cross in the line into marriage and you're beginning to build your family, and I mean, even really now, but they're going to have a lot of content for you guys there. But really excited for this. Jeremy Pryor is interviewing two dads here. And again, the title of the video is going to be Christian Hospitality Tips if you're just starting to host. And hopefully this will have a lot of beginner tips for you guys who are looking to, number one, have people into your home to broaden your marriage prospects and meet more people. And then number two, maintain a healthy community once you've crossed the line into marriage. So without further ado, let's go ahead and see what they have to say.
I really do think that there's something powerful about like beginning something like an Abrahamic hospitality, like different practices. How would you guys encourage somebody who might be wanting just to get started? What's sort of like the training wheels version of starting to show hospitality?
I'll jump in and I think it starts with using your table in general. I think the average American family doesn't eat hardly any meals around the table. And so I think you have to start there. You have to value the table enough to do it yourself. And then you have something to invite other people into. So we've been really fighting as a family over the last probably 5 or 6 years, and are currently in a season where, by God's grace, we're eating 3 meals a day around the table with our kids, which is unheard of. And we never actually thought we would get here, even like with work schedules and all of that stuff. And it's been amazing. But I think what it's done too is it's totally changed our perspective of food, of the table, of how we use that space. And we're already cultivating faith conversations and stuff with the kids and memorizing Bible verses, or, doing Shabbat stuff on Friday, whatever it is. And I think then you're building the foundational elements of something you can invite others into. And then for us, the next stepping stone was inviting people to join us for Shabbat on Friday.
Okay, so a couple things so far from this clip. What I'm liking is that it starts small. The hosting routine, tradition, experience, whatever you want to call, starts small and then grows into something bigger. So this guy talking here began with just his family unit. He began a routine, a tradition with them of having a meal. He probably started at just having one meal all together around a table at the same time, doing nothing other than eating together. And then from that, he grew it into having 3 meals a day. And from there, he grew it into having 3 meals a day every day of the week. And so from there, he began to bring other people, outsiders, into their family practice. And I think the advantage of doing something like this is anytime you're starting something new, if you don't start small and you don't have a pre-established routine, it's going to be very hard to make this routine that you're trying to create of inviting other people in sustainable. And you've got to make it sustainable, or the second reason that you're listening to this video just is totally null and void. Because if you can't maintain a healthy community around you without a very tradition oriented routine practice of eating together and having community together. If you don't have the routine, you'll do it once or twice and then it'll basically never happen again. Because you have to have this pattern, this follow through. It's got to be as natural to you as breathing. Having people into your home, I find, if you want to make it sustainable, has got to be as natural to you as breathing. So the question is, how do you get there? How do you get from it's super hard to plan and coordinate with people in order to get this thing to happen? It's super hard to find people that are interested to get this thing to happen. It's super hard to do all the hard things leading up to this event. And so how do I get to make it as easy as breathing? In order to make it more sustainable for my life and the life of my family and my children and my wife. And so the way that you do that, I think Mr. Chris here touched on that perfectly, is you start small. So instead of inviting, 15 people over to your home, 15 young single adults over to your home for a game night, what you might do is start with a sibling game night or a family game night or a game night with people that you know are going to be immediately available and are going to actually show up to this gathering. And then you do that several times and you kind of establish a micro mini routine here. And then in doing that, you find out all the problems that you're going to come across. You find out sort of the difficulties of putting on an event. You know kind of how many paper plates and cups and what food to have, and what music to play in the background, how long to make the event, what to include in the invitation, etc. And you learn all of this on a micro scale. So start small, learn the difficult things that are coming your way on a micro scale. And once you have that routine down, you can then expand upon it and begin inviting other people into this pre-existing routine. And again, the trouble you're saving yourself by doing that is what's coming, and it's not as difficult to start something big once you already have started something small. And so that's the biggest thing that he's said so far. Let's continue and see what other practical hospitality tips he gives you for people who are just starting to host. So far, I really like that one. That's something I think is going to help you guys.
And it's like one or two people and things like that. But yeah, Phil, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I think I didn't even think about the fact that the table, that is like a huge issue. I guess that like we've tried to be really intentional to use our table for our family first, right? Like to as many meals as we can, like let's be intentional with the table. I didn't even think about the fact that like a lot of it is normal. You just go out to eat or you eat in front of the TV. Like it's a very like our culture, those things are so normal, right? The table might not even be very normal. So that's a good first one. I think second, it's like good to address the fears that might exist, right? So one fear might be like, I can't cook. Maybe you have a husband and wife, they don't really cook, right? Or they're insecure about what they might make themselves. So I think make stuff easy off the gate, right? Like just, yes, use your table, order food in, right? So don't put this pressure on yourself to have to cook some kind of elaborate meal. Make it as easy as it has to be as far as like preparation goes. And then the people that you bring in, I think pick the easiest people first, right? Test it with the easiest people, whether that's some people, the family is actually not the easiest, right? Like their in-laws might be the hard people to invite to the dinner, right? So start with the ones that are the easiest, whether that's like your friends, or if it is your kids, right? Or maybe it is like for us, like we try to be really intentional with our, both we're just so fortunate to have both sets of grandparents like within 15 minutes of us. So we are trying to pull them in all the time. So they're the easiest people for us. So I think find your easiest people and don't put pressure on yourself to have to cook some elaborate thing.
Something actually he hit on a lot of things there that I think are really good. Number one being making it as easy on yourself and your family as possible, as easy on the hosting family as possible. And one way you can do that, I've found me and my wife have learned this year that you don't want to use dishes for these events. Something that is going to make this routine more sustainable for you is that you're going to want to invest in some plastic cups, some of those red Solo cups, and paper plates, plastic spoons, plastic forks, plastic knives, napkins, the whole shebang. Just buy it. It'll be like $15, and it'll last you probably 2 or 3 gatherings. And that $5 per gathering is so worth it, because what it does is it makes the cleanup process easier, and a lot of times the sustainability of repeating these gatherings gets killed by the amount of cleanup that goes into a gathering if you use dishes. And so if you're doing the dishes for 15, 16, up to 20 people, every week, it is exhausting, and that will kill your incentive, your motivation, your desire even to have people over that often. And so if you're looking to have a sustainable rhythm, just buy paper equipment, just buy paper utensils, paper plates, paper bowls, whatever you need in order to minimize the cleanup process. Keep your house clean is another thing I would suggest. Clean up as you go, because that's going to make it you able to pull these events off kind of at the drop of a hat, instead of basically having to put all this preparation and this huge amount of energy into readying your space to host something. If you already keep it clean and live clean, you can easily arrange the house in such a way that you can have company quickly, kind of at the drop of a hat. And that's something you often have to do when you're working with other people, and especially people who are routinely going to engage in this practice with you. And so make your house ready and live in a way that your house is easy to clean up. Don't leave stuff laying around. Have the clothes done, have the dishes done, etc. That's going to make it way easier to pull this off. And another thing he said is order out and take out. And yes, I know it's more expensive, but golly, guys, it saves you so much time. And again, if you're looking to make this sustainable and you're actually looking to make this a repeatable habit in your life, you're going to have to start small and make it easy. So instead of buying all the ingredients for this huge meal and getting this amazing recipe and putting in all the time to making it and starting it at the right time so it's ready before the event, don't worry about any of that. I would just get some pizzas. It's not difficult. Most people have a pizza place close to where they live. Grab a couple of pizzas. Again, it is more expensive, but the beautiful thing about having that many people is if you ask people to bring things, they're not only contributors to the event, but they actually cut down on the amount of spending that you have to do in order to pull one of these events off. It basically, the expense is shared among the people. So if you provide the pizzas, ask somebody to pick up paper plates, ask somebody to pick up plastic cups, ask somebody to pick up napkins, ask somebody to bring chips, ask somebody to bring drinks. And then suddenly, bam, you only had to provide one thing, but you have a full meal there and it's ready to go as soon as the event starts. That is totally, there's nothing wrong with asking people to contribute and chip in when there's a routine that is being repeated every week or every other week, whatever's sustainable for you. Again, start small. If you can only do it once a month, just do it once a month, but be intentional about making sure it happens every month. And then if you feel like, hey, we've got this habit down pretty well, we're going to start and do it once a week or once every 2 weeks. Once every 2 weeks, I think, is a good rhythm because it just gives you a break week. But you don't have to do everything by yourself. And that's what kills the sustainability of these events. My family has done house church for upwards of 10 years, I think. We've done this for a decade. And it's usually bi-weekly to monthly meetings. And the way that we've made that sustainable and that we've done that for such a long period of time is by having everyone contribute to the meal. We don't provide everything when we host. When our friends host, they don't provide everything. We all come together with something, and in doing so, that creates the meal that we all enjoy together. And so basically just don't be afraid to ask people to contribute. Ask people to pick up, hey, can you pick up this thing on the way? Would really appreciate it. Thanks so much. A lot of times people know this and will ask you what they can bring, and just take that opportunity to let them know. It's going to make this so much more sustainable in the long run. They've talked a lot about in this video just making the table central again and actually utilizing that space. I think that's great, but there are lots of things that you can use as sort of a central gathering point in your home that aren't necessarily just the table. So I think the table is just one thing, one central element that everyone can kind of gather around and share together. Another good one would be an outdoor movie screen. That's sort of a figurative table. It's something that everyone comes together for and sits around in order to enjoy something together. Another thing could be just a regular coffee table with some board games. Everyone loves a good board game night. I actually don't like games more than your average person, but even I enjoy hosting game nights because it's something that we can all do together. It makes icebreakers totally irrelevant when you have a new group, and it works wonders for actually getting interaction going. And so, could not recommend a game night more if you're doing again the gathering where you're kind of trying to build prospects for yourself as a young single person, and you're trying to invite lots of people into your home to get to know them. This is going to be a great choice for you, the game night. So basically, just have something, a centralized something that everyone can gather around in the home. And in doing so, that can be a source of conversation. It can keep people on target. It can keep the purpose of the meeting at the center. All of that is good. And it's something that's easy to do in your meeting. So just pick something to do, have an event, and make it clear what the event is in your invitation. I'm about 2/3 of the way through a book by a person on hospitality. It's called The Art of Gathering. I think the author's name is Priya Parker. I could have that wrong though, so I will include the link to that book in the show notes of this episode if you want to read it for yourself. I'm actually listening to the Audible version because it's easier for me. I always listen to Audible stuff. That's why I make podcasts, because I think they're easier to consume for people. But anyway, this book has a lot of good tips on hosting, and something she says is to have basically like frequent updates that build anticipation for your event leading up to the actual day itself. So she says that your gathering doesn't really start on the day that people arrive. It starts in the lead up to the event. So from the moment that you send out the invitations and people start RSVPing, you can build anticipation by reminding them of the event, sending them jokes, sending them quotes relevant to the event, sending them reminders or exciting announcements. And you can do this daily, weekly, however you want, leading up to the event. And what that does is it reminds people that they have something to look forward to, and it builds anticipation for the event that you're putting on. And so I would recommend that for all of you guys who are doing this as well. Let's continue to see what they have to say, though, because so far they've had a lot of good stuff in this video. I'll share the screen, by the way, for those of you who are subscribed to the show. You can watch on YouTube or on any podcast platform you want, specifically Spotify, but if you want to watch for free, you can do so by watching on YouTube. The only consequence is you have to wait a little bit later to see the video. If you're a subscriber, you get early access to the video content we're producing, but you can watch on YouTube for free if you'd like. So let's go ahead and continue. Let's see what they have to say.
Make it easy on yourself on cleanup too. Like use disposable stuff. Like very practically. I know people can kind of get anxious about a lot of these things. Well, there's going to be a big
That's
mess,
exactly what I
or
said,
I don't know how to cook very well, or who do I am? So I think just addressing some of the fears and kind of like expounding it's not the right word. Expelling some of those fears out the gate would really help take some baby steps,
Yeah. Well, I wanted to hear too, Phil, you describe a little bit about what it looks like to teach at the table. Because I know that for me, that was a big barrier because I was so used to, like I was saying, teaching is something that happens in a church building. And so to me, it was a lot more comfortable standing in front of 100, hyped up middle schoolers and giving them a lesson than standing in front of my family and starting to do any kind of intentional teaching or discussion. Like that was just felt out of place, very awkward. Like, feels like I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, again, because it wasn't that we weren't experiencing that. I experienced a ton of that growing up, but it was really centered in the church. And so it was really weird to bring it into the house. I remember, I had this experience a couple of years ago when we were in Israel. When we take groups over to Israel, we always go to Orthodox family's Shabbat dinner. And we were at the Shabbat dinner with this guy. He's probably 35 years old. And he was hosting, and it was like incredibly complex dinner time because he had like about 30 guests from America. That was our group. And then he had his whole family. His mom was there. His sister was there with her whole family. It was like 10 to 12 people from his family, 30 people. And this guy stood in front of the Shabbat table and he led and taught, and there was singing and there was like discussion and there was teaching, and it was all interwoven. I was just like, it was like a clinic for how to lead a table. And I could tell this guy clearly has a like he's been a part of a tradition that has learned how to really lead a table time in a way that I've never even experienced, and I was so blessed by it. And I practice this on a weekly basis with my family. Like, okay, what can we do? And it's for me, it's always like a process of trying to get better at this thing. And anytime I walk into somebody's house and I see how they do it, because there's not one perfect way to do it. There's a ton of ways to do this. I'm just so inspired. So like, yeah, take us inside of the Goodwin house. We're all sitting there. Like, how do you lead people into any kind of like teaching or intentional time?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, I think the scariest, I don't know the scariest right word. The most uncomfortable for me is actually when it's just my family. If it's like me, my wife, my 3 kids, that's the most uncomfortable situation for me to teach in. And I feel the most out of water, like fish out of water feeling of that. When we bring in people who they've never experienced a Shabbat before, or if we're doing like a Passover celebration, right? Or we're kind of meeting together during Sukkot, that feels easier to me because there's kind of stuff and topics that we are specifically addressing. I've looked at these topics a lot. I've read these things a lot. In Passover, we have a Haggadah. We have a booklet we're going through. It's just an easier time to teach.
Yeah.
The every Friday night, like hangout time, it's very short. Anything teachy is kind of very short. And it's definitely like all right, I don't really know what I'm doing every week, right? But when we normally start with, we try to keep it easy and we just sing the Shabbat Shalom song every Friday. So the two word Shabbat Shalom song.
Yes.
And my kids like kick it off for us. And I always say, I told my oldest, I'm like, all right, Finn, let's go. Like, start it up. And we like bang the table and we start that off. And so anybody who's like joining us and never been a part of it, it's super easy to learn, right? And it's just kind of a fun, like loose way to get everybody around the table and like kick it off. So that's as far as like very practically. So I'd try to kick it off with the song because it's easy. And then my wife lights some candles to make way for like a nice candlelit dinner. And then normally I kind of address like stuff about Shabbat to remind us, right? Like, all right, we do this to remind ourselves that we are, we're working from a place of rest. This is the reset time of the week instead of the other way around where we're just working to get to this day. This is actually the first day that kind of sets us up for, what's to come next week. And so just trying to teach a little bit about that. And if people are totally unfamiliar with anything kind of like rooted in kind of Old Testament, history of around like a Shabbat or a feast, we talk about, the moon. This is why we kind of celebrate this stuff when the sun goes down. We talk about, creation and Genesis 1. So those are kind of like the basic sort of stuff we hit on. And then we normally, talk about Jesus and body and blood. We do like communion together every Friday. So we kind of make that a part of our Shabbat before we actually dive into eating like the bulk of the meal with, all the mains and the sides and stuff.
Something I do want to share just real quickly, based on what he's saying. He's talking about a specific, his family's Shabbat gathering and all the feasts that they did. So it sounds like they've kind of taken a lot of the Jewish feasts and adapted them for their own home. But a lot of what he said there is actually really applicable to hosting things. Number one being, if you can have some kind of tradition that you start off with every time you do something, it gets people in the right spirit for the gathering. I've gone to mentoring for, I don't even know how many years now, like 5 or 6. And my mentors always read me this sheet every time we do a mentoring session that says the same thing over and over every time, and it gets me in the right headspace for mentoring. It also just sort of formalizes and not necessarily formalizes, but memorializes the event and makes it something unique and special. And so it just has something that if you have a game night, a lot of people will pray before they do gatherings. That's a great tradition. You could sing, like they said. I wouldn't do that just because I think some people are uncomfortable singing, but it is what it is for different people. If you have a bunch of friends who are really into singing, that might be great. I would do something like congratulations, or there's a coaching call that I'm a part of now where they do wins. They say, anybody have any wins this week? And then that's your time to share basically something cool that happened, a breakthrough that you had, you and your family. Anyway, there are lots of great kickoff ideas that you can have for these meetings that get people in the right headspace. He also mentioned something out there that I wanted to touch on, and he said candles. Candles are an ambiance tool. They're a mood tool, an atmosphere tool. You can use, there are lots of tools, lots of mood and atmosphere tools that you can use in hosting your own events. The best ones that I find are the lighting, yes, but also the sound. Man, if you're having a church gathering or a Bible study or something like that, I could not recommend, a background instrumental pad more, or just maybe even some soft instrumental worship music going in the background. That really sets the mood. If people hear, they'll often recognize those songs, and that will get them in their headspace of receiving from the Lord and also ministering to the Lord and each other. And so that's a great thing to do, to play in the background. If you have more of a game night going, I would still utilize that Bluetooth speaker that you've probably got sitting around somewhere. Just play some, maybe more upbeat acoustic and folk, even if you want to go a little bit more relaxing, but just some kind of instrumental background music. Again, not something with lyrics that disrupts conversation and kind of dominates the space, but just play something that is, in harmony with talking, people talking to each other, and helps that and sets the tone of the evening. Whatever the tone of your evening you want to be, you can play any kind of music you want. And so could not recommend that more. Again, the lighting is also good. A lot of people have dimmable lights in their home. You can use those too. If you want a more cozy atmosphere, turn the lights down a little bit. If you want a nice and bright atmosphere, turn the lights up a little bit. I actually want to try opening our windows one event like this, because I feel we live in a 2-story apartment right now, my wife and I, and it's really nice in our living room, much better than our last spot. So we've been hosting more, but I kind of want to experiment with this idea of opening the windows to make people feel how high up they are. And we're not like, it's just a 2-story. It's not like we're way off the ground, but I feel like it would make you feel like you were in a loft, and it would make you feel open and like you were outside, and just comfortable with nature. And so that's another great thing I would do. Maybe try opening the windows. That would be a really great thing. Again, I wouldn't necessarily, here's the order I would do it. If you invite people in for an event, I would always have food, and I would always do the event first and then move into food, because people don't wear down. When they come in, they're sharp, they're ready. They've been anticipating this moment all week, and they're ready to get things on the road. So I find it's best if you have a game night, just come in, you can do some small talk for a little bit, do your opener, and then jump straight into games. And then after games, I find that it's good to, hey, just have a transition time. Hey, everyone, thanks so much for coming this evening. These games have been super fun. Love the conversation I'm hearing. Let's go ahead and migrate into the kitchen. Dinner's ready now. And so thank you all for contributing to that. And we're now going to kick it off into the dinner portion of the evening and just talk some about the games we have. And then a lot of you can stay after for some more games if you'd like. So let's just go ahead and move in that way. Then you can pray for the meal and just have a time of meal sharing, and then move back into games. And again, that's if you're the young person who wants to do more of the gathering prospects and getting to know people in your home who are your age. If you're already married and looking to basically build a community, it would be something like a house church or a Bible study or a couples night or a family coaching night, whatever you were doing. You could just transition that way. But I really like this video. These people, as always, they always do such great work. So I always really like to listen to their content, and I would encourage you guys to do so as well. Again, family teams, Jeremy Pryor, Jefferson Bethke, could not recommend more what they're doing. Not only for now, but primarily for once you become married and you have your family and you're beginning to build it. Definitely look into what they're doing. So thank you guys so much for listening today. Reach out and let me know this time, not only your thoughts on the episode and your feedback, questions, comments, etc., but give me the rundown of how your event went, or something that you learned in a past event that you've hosted. I would really love to hear kind of some of your hosting tips, as well as kind of glean any, ideas from how you host your meetings. I would really like to hear that. So that would be something that I can get out of doing this podcast. If you would like to give back to me, just let me know some hosting tips that you have. I would always love to hear those. My wife and I, that will help us in our gathering. So thanks so much for considering doing that. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram if you're interested in the content we post. So thank you guys so much for listening today, and we will talk to you all next time.